pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's begin our special meeting of Delaware Water Gap Borough Council. We have our agenda set, but I would actually like to jump ahead and take care of the motion to authorize the solicitor to advertise hydrant flushing for the week of April 8th.
I'll make that. Go ahead.
Ian made the motion.
I'll second.
Derek second, to authorize the solicitor to advertise for hydrant flushing. That's the week of April 8th. Remember that, okay.
Could take a vote, please, sir?
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Motion passes. The second item I would like to take care of is the Building Code Board of Appeals.
We need Deb for that.
Pardon?
That's Deb.
We do need her there here for that?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so I will hold off on that. That's a item to do an intermunicipal agreement to join in with the other municipality boards, but we'll wait on that. So now we will open our discussion for the firehouse renovation and the engineer proposals. Our solicitor is on her way, which is helpful. Hopefully you all have had an opportunity to review the lowest bid from the company W2 Architects, and also had an opportunity to look at the grant applications that were provided to us. Before I go any further, I want to make a correction to the presentation that I made in the last week. In my presentation, I had not found evidence of a motion or resolution for the second grant. It was provided to us. I was incorrect in saying that we didn't have one because we couldn't find it. So I stand corrected on that point. There was a resolution to support the second grant. So we have that now, we have the grant applications. So items for consideration in this, and I will defer to council members soon, is whether or not we can accept the bid that we opened, the lowest bid that we opened last, which was from a company called W2A Architects. That lowest bid came in at $58,000, and it was for engineering, planning, contracting, supervision, and contracting of supervision of the construction work that was to be done. I will remind you that the first phase of the grants, the amount that was allocated or awarded was $200,000. There was an appeal that was sent on behalf of the fire company because engineering costs had not been factored in when that grant was written. They were allowed $20,000 of the $200,000 for engineering. The lowest bid that we have for engineering is $58,000. Keep in mind that these grants are reimbursable grants, which means the contractors are paid, we submit the paperwork, and then if everything is right and correct according to the LSA board, they would reimburse the $58,000. So when you think about the $20,000 that has to come out of the $200,000 for engineering, keep in mind that the rest of the money for the engineering is also on a reimbursement situation. So what I'm saying is if the bill is for $58,000 for engineering, we have to assure that we have $58,000 to pay to get reimbursed for. So that's one thing to take in consideration. The other thing, I reviewed the application and I reviewed what the engineer stated that they would do, the work that they would do for the $58,000. One thing we have to make sure is that we make it clear of the limitations of funding when the engineer contracts for the work. One of the things that concerns me deeply is the application indicated that there was, the building siding, wood and metal was rotting and rusting, and that the windows were leaking, and there's a mold issue. So, given the limitations of the funding, we have to consider that when the siding is pulled off, and the rotting wood and the molding remediation is done, that we have no idea what to expect from that situation. And so contingencies have to be there, because even if you don't complete work, it costs you money to put back what you don't complete. And any of you that have any experience with contracting understand what I'm saying here, is that if I have mold and rot underneath the siding of my house, and I pay someone to pull it back to fix it, and they tell me it's twice the amount that I have in funds, I have to consider what it's gonna cost me for them to put it back, or fix it, or not fix it. So all these things are things that we need to consider when we're looking at the funding for this. And so I asked for this special meeting so that the fire company can have an opportunity to look at their funds to make a determination on how far they can go with this before you run out of funds. And the grant, remember, the funds have not been allocated to us. Everything is on a reimbursement situation. So everything we do has to be on point, above board, because there's a possibility that you not get reimbursed for it. That's all I'm trying to express here. So all of these things are in consideration. With that in mind, we have a bid for $58,000 to do engineering planning for what SRS called phase 1, 2, and 3. The grants were written up in 2 phases. And those 2 phases were estimated at $630,000.
$690, Lisa.
$690, thank you for correcting me. The allocation in grants was for $200,000 for the first phase, $150,000 for the second phase, which falls really short of what was estimated. Again, an appeal was made because no engineering costs were factored in there. So now you have $180,000 for phase 1, $150,000 for phase 2. Our borough manager contacted the LSA grant administrators to determine if the $150,000 could be used for anything. It can only be used for what they consider phase 2, and phase 2 is what was presented to them when the grant was written. So all reimbursements that we have to deal with are based on what the administrators of the grant agreed to. And they agreed to $200,000 for the first phase and $150,000 for the second phase. So I'm noting all of this so that you take it into consideration when you're planning for this. So, with that said, one of the things that we have to determine is whether or not we can accept, or if it's feasible to accept the lowest bid for the engineering, or if we have to go through the rebidding process again, given the variables here. That's the first thing I want to consider, and I'll hear from council. Derek, if you want to.
So I spent some time going over the numbers, reading about the phases. So I guess my biggest concern is there's gonna be a lack in funds for both phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1, we were awarded, the fire department was awarded $230,000. I'm sorry, the grant was for $230,000. We were awarded $200,000. Out of that, $20,000 was given to engineering, so that brings it down to available for a job at $180,000. And Lisa, you, in your PowerPoint presentation, you asked or referred to a $10,000 contingency fund. I think in engineering.
I just threw that out there. It's up to council to decide what they think is reasonable for contingency, because there's a lot of things to
Okay.
think about. Okay, so if we just deal with engineering first,
Yes,
and there's $58,000
right,
to pay for engineering.
right, so 20,000 was, Jamie wrote a letter to the state asking that 20,000 of that for phase one, of that 200,000 be allocated to engineering. So that brings the available funds down to, for the building portion of it, down to 180,000.
Mhm.
So so basically you're gonna have 180,000 available for contracting, for doing the work, on a $230,000 project. So that leaves us about 50,000 in the hole, like, you know, where's this money gonna come from? So that, and I guess where I'm going with this thing is, let me back up a little bit. Similarly, phase two is another $230,000 grant or application for a grant. And we were the fire department was awarded $150,000 for that phase. I don't believe there was any engineering, dedicated towards that. So that leaves, that project $80,000 in the hole. So at that point, then you have to either decide, like, are you gonna be able to come up with all this additional money? Or are you gonna shave items off the project list so that you can pay for, you know, basically the job? And when I look at these two issues, phase three, all the fire department did was apply for it. I don't think there was a response to it.
We didn't apply for it yet,
Oh, okay.
only the first two phases.
So I'm thinking it's probably prudent to hit each phase one and phase two separately. Bid out the, engineering just for phase one and have the engineer determine if indeed the money is not available for the entire project, which it doesn't seem like it is, what parts of the project can be left out, if it's possible. Cause you know, I mean, if we only have $180,000, 20 of obviously is going to to engineering, and we have an estimated, the cost of the estimated project at 230, we're minus 50 grand.
So my question, I understand what you're saying, my question is, if we do another bid with engineering for just phase one, and then with responsibility for the grant that was awarded for phase two, we have to do another bidding
Correct.
for engineering for phase two. Do you think that we may spend more by doing two separate bids, or would come off better doing one bid where they do all the drawings and plans at once?
I guess you could do it as one project, but with the realization that the engineer, whoever is selected or wins the bid, is gonna be responsible for laying out what is affordable based on the grant for each phase. I mean, cause the way it's listed now, we have an estimate on phase one for $230,000. We have an anticipated fund of 180 plus engineering costs, right, which would take it up to 200. That's 50,000 of items in the project that are gonna have to be removed from the project.
Okay, so do you think
In terms of,
rebidding the engineering would be more economical or not?
I don't think it would be more economical. I mean, if it's gonna be rebid, I don't know if it would be more economical or not, but it would be, I think, prudent or definitely, beneficial if you had the same engineer on those two phases.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think we could probably bid it out with the understanding that you know, the engineer that wins the bid is gonna be responsible for both phases, with the understanding that part of his responsibility is gonna be, removing some items from each phase so that it equals the amount of money available.
So tell me this, do you think with the engineer that came out, did the photos, and did the estimates for their work on phase 1 and 2, do you think it would be cheaper if we do the bidding again and say for just phase 1, do you really think that it's gonna come out half of the cost of phase 1 and 2? Here's where I'm thinking in my mind, and someone tell me if I'm wrong in thinking this. This is where my mind process is. Remember when we did the roads project, and they said, we can come out and do one part of this for this amount. But if we come out and if you break it into 2 and we have to remobilize again, it's gonna cost you way more to do the same project. My question is, in engineering, you know, those of you who had experience with engineering bidding, do you think this $58,000 bid will be less if we have to do it 2 times?
Well, you mean, will it be more, like if we actually had to
Or-
do it twice,
Yeah,
would it cost?
will it be more or less? Or is it still gonna be $58,000?
I didn't look at the bid specs that went out for the engineering spec, but I think you would, to me, it would be very prudent to make sure that the engineer understands that, you know, of the financial limitations, and that each phase has to be handled separately.
I agree with you,
I mean, that's like.
We have not dealt with the engineer, we did not deal with the grant writer, we did
Right.
not deal with anything other than maybe Allison's communication with one of the grant analysts at some point.
Right,
So this is our first time having our input
right,
into how this will go,
cause
so we
phase,
have to talk to them.
right, so phase 1 right now, we're looking at removing $50,000 of the phase. Phase 2, we're looking at removing $80,000 of the phase, that's without, alright, so there might be, you know, I don't wanna say that would be without engineering, but it would be a considerable amount of money removed from that project. That being said, you're still gonna have $150,000 of work done in phase 2. It's a good thing, I just don't think it's gonna be.
We still have to show and secure funds for the engineering costs, which are still the unknown.
So, and that was, so when that letter was written to the state by Jamie requesting that $20,000 of the $200,000 grant be awarded to engineering, is that something that is doable for phase 2? Was it a 10, I don't know if there's a
That's the
rule out
question,
there
because if we do a different bid now, and we say, we want you to give us a bid for phase 1 with the limitations on finance. There's $20,000 in that $200,000 that can be used for engineering. If it goes over that, fire company still has to come up with the rest of that money. Now, when you get to phase 2, nothing in that $150,000 is allotted for engineering.
Now the question is, can we ask? Do we know if we can ask?
I don't see why we can't, we did for
I don't know if that's like, if it was a 10%.
I don't know, but we're 2 years away from this thing being awarded. We're 2 years out from it being awarded, and they've
Right.
seen nothing.
And in June of next year is the end date of being reimbursed for phase 1.
No.
Oh, I thought it was, I'm sorry.
Well, it can be extended.
Okay.
I mentioned that at the last meeting.
You did, Ally, yeah.
Yes.
But that would have to be a request also.
That would have to be a request.
I've already spoken to the DCD analyst about that, and I have the date when it needs to be requested.
Is there a limitation on how many of those are?
Since our meeting with Senator Brown, she's the one who suggested I handle that.
Is there a limitation on how many of those extensions you can apply?
That I'm not sure about.
So Lisa, I'm sorry, Ally.
Okay.
So I think, I think it would be prudent, I guess, to contact the engineer and ask them if they would be, well, right now it's 58,000 for both phases.
You're right.
I think you have to put a new request out that says what you're looking, I mean, I don't think the request was specific enough about what it was we were looking for and what we needed them to do. And part of that is I will take responsibility for, because I don't know if I was clear of what was being requested from all of, I think we're all learning a lot. But I think it should say, we have X amount of money and we're looking for you to do engineering for this, so that it's a closed parameter for folks when they're bidding, that they know that you have $20,000 to do the engineering, to do this portion. And if you don't, it's just a request for proposals, not necessarily a bid process, because you can make a decision based upon more than just the price that comes at you, because it's professional services. But I think that you need to be clear in what you have to spend, so they can be clear as to what work they think they can do for that. But also, if you include more than one phase, then you don't have to go out and request another proposal. If you're happy with the services that you're receiving, you can contract with them to continue, rather than if you include the specifications in the entire thing. That doesn't mean you have to use them. If you're unhappy with them for phase one, you can.
So we should ask for the engineering costs to be broken down between phase 1 and 2.
Yes, but then say, right now, we only have X for phase one.
Right,
I don't know
because,
what the hell we have for phase two, but.
yeah. So here's the concern that I have, is that, and that's why we were asking for the treasurer of the fire company to come to our meeting, because we need to be assured that there's funds to cover the cost, because it is a reimbursable grant. So if we contract someone to do the work, the borough, and it has to be paid and reimbursed, and 2, if something's not right and we don't get reimbursed, the borough suffers for that. So I'm trying to get all our ducks in a row here for that.
And I just want to bring up, and so Allison forwarded some documents to me that came from the state, directed towards us, about, using prevailing wages and making sure those ducks are in a row.
Yeah,
And
that's
if
all.
those are
That's in the bidding, yeah.
Yeah.
The engineer handles all of that.
yeah,
Like
so
this.
that would be an engineering
Yeah,
responsibility.
that's the engineer's responsibility, and
That's
they know
correct.
that it's written in with the request for proposals. Okay, so,
And if the 58,000 is was for allocated for both phases, I think it's really important that, and Deb, so correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about having it rebid with these specifications, like, what we want, like, this is the amount of money that was allocated, this is the current estimate, these are the funds available.
Yeah, just be more clear in
Yeah.
the request as to what we
Right,
need from them and what we have available.
right,
so they can tailor it towards that.
exactly, which means
Will
tailoring
we
means
be
removing
asking
items from.
for a bid for phase 1 and phase 2, or just phase 1? Because in my mind, if we're satisfied, we would have to do it again for
Yeah.
phase 2, and we would again have to be shown funds to support that.
And the funds are available right now for phase 2.
What funds? From the fire company?
Oh, I'm sorry, just up to the grant, 150. That was awarded for phase 2.
But none of it can be used for engineering.
Allison, has there been have you had any discussions with anyone about whether that would be a possibility?
No, I have not,
Okay.
but I can reach out to the DCD analyst and find out how to proceed with that.
And the general rule with LSA grants is only 15% can be used for engineering when they allow it.
Oh, is that what
I
it
don't
is?
know about that.
That's the, that is the
10 to
general
15%?
application rule for LSA. When you apply for it, they usually do not allow this more than 15% for engineering.
I
Yeah,
guess,
but if we could get 10% of the second one, that's $15,000, it means you then have,
True, I understand.
then you're putting something else in, you have 35 to do the engineering for 1 and 2.
True, and I know I'm thinking way ahead of the game, but if we are fortunate enough to get through phase 1, and the fire company has to extend the extra money for the engineering and possibly contingency, my question is, if we don't plan for the cost of engineering in phase two, they may not have it at that point.
So Lisa, so that would be, so if you're allocated hypothetically $100,000 grant, so 15% of that or 15,000 of that would be awarded, it could be, allocated for engineering, that would leave the project $85,000.
That's if it's written in and it's allotted that way. It wasn't written in, there was no request for engineering.
I guess the thing to do would be to contact LSA and see if we can have 15% of that 150 for.
If you would like me to do that, I can do that. If you want me to reach out to the analyst, I can do that and find out what the process is. Okay?
Yeah,
Okay, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I
the
think it would
first, but the
definitely
first
be-
question on the table that I want to try and work through today is, do we rebid the engineering and do we rebid it just for one phase or for both phases?
Wouldn't you do it for both phases? I mean, you have the right to walk away from any of those proposals, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I don't see any problem in saying, look, we want a proposal for this, and we want a proposal for that, and there we go. The second part, and reading this, it is really, somebody described it as loosey-goosey, okay? The specificity of information in here is non-existent, as I see it. I mean, it's a lot of, somebody was, said, I'm gonna just put something down here to fill the space, but if you're gonna have someone, a contractor, giving you a meaningful price for this and that, and the price would be for their services, their anticipated price for contractors, and then thirdly, something else, which I'm forgetting, but, that should happen. You can't, I don't see going, I wouldn't do my back porch with the specificity that they have in this. Does anyone agree or disagree?
That's why you need an engineer.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So you need to get,
This was an
we're gonna
estimate
have
from
to
the
pay,
contractor.
can I just get over, we're gonna have to pay for maybe the engineer to come in and say, give us some, tell us what we have here, and that way, when we do take it out to bid, we're gonna get something back, it's not, junk out and junk back. Do we agree there?
Yeah, it was the first estimate that we saw, because before we even saw the grant request, pretty much is written up like a wish list of, I want this and I want that, but there's no specifics on material.
Yeah, I'm not critical of
No,
any part
no,
of this. I'm
you're
just-
right. So the engineer, which this one did a walkthrough, took pictures and gave an idea of what they would manage. We still, when we go back, we definitely have to say, this is what we have, we've been awarded, this is what we were allotted for engineering, this is what we have for construction, with all these things that they wish for.
The good thing about a proposal is when you go out and you say, this is what we wanna do, and you give them some general ideas, but they're giving you a proposal. They are saying, it's our idea that this is what you want, or you don't want that. That happens in a proposal. And so you're coming back with essentially engineering information that you're gonna send out to have someone come give you a quote.
Well, also this engineer, this proposal, indicated that they would handle the contract bidding
But we want them to handle more than that.
and also the construction.
We want a document to go out that's gonna ask them this, for a proposal. You want them to tell you what this is gonna happen, because you can't go with what we have there.
And that's why,
Unless somebody sees we can.
and that's why I think our solicitor is saying that the next bid would be more specific.
Well, I think the
I
bid,
think it
could-
is.
I mean, I think we could still use the same framework of the phases that we have now, which I think we have to, because that's what the grant is based on, the LSA grants. but that the language in the request for proposals can say that the project is grant funded. We have, well, there is specific amount that's been awarded under the grant, not everything may be, we'll need the engineer's guidance in what portions under each phase can be completed, given the grant funds available, or something to those
Yeah.
effects, that saying, look, this is what we propose to do under 1 and 2, but we only have so much grant money. The engineer is gonna be responsible for helping us figure out what under that, or how we can accomplish what we need under that. I think we can arrange language in the request for proposals that kind of says that.
So you think we definitely need to redo the,
I think so. I don't think it's fair necessarily, even for the folks who've given us proposals, to say, we've given you proposals and we've asked you to give us a proposal on how much it's gonna cost you to do this, and now we're gonna tell you, oh, by the way, you told us how much it would cost you to do this, and we only have this amount of money to pay you.
But there was one other part I thought, and maybe I'm wrong here, are we putting the horse before the cart, as they used to love to say? Because it isn't, I guess I'm wrong here, but isn't one of the first things we could do is to go out there and look at what we have so far, and then go out to Harrisburg or to our local politician or whatever, and say, hey, we goofed. We got a situation here where we don't have enough money to implement what we asked for. Is there a place we can get additional funding, additional this or that? I'm just thinking, is that something we wanna do before we get into everything else? It'd be first on my list.
Well, I think they asked for all the money, when they applied, they asked for the money they needed to complete a phase, and they were given what they were given.
Well, but if that was the only problem, we'd all go home and we would be in good shape. There's perhaps somewhere there is a grant, perhaps somewhere there is money that we can get to help bridge this.
here's my thought on this, is that, first of all, they asked for $600,000+ for this project. And they were allocated $200,000 the first time around, and then $150,000 the next time
No, they only
around.
asked for $230 the first time.
Can I explain that?
But wait, what I'm saying is, with what was awarded, it's set here for 2 years with nobody doing anything. So to go now, after 2 years, and say, oh, you didn't award what we wanted and what we asked for, we haven't done anything in 2 years of what you awarded us, but we still want more.
I wouldn't have any problem saying that. I mean,
I-
it is the truth, isn't it?
So when we got the
No, it's
grant.
not. When I
Excuse me.
allowed this to say my turn, I would like to explain some of this.
Go ahead, have your.
It hasn't been sitting for 2 years. We've done a lot of legwork on this. And we got a proposal. That's what we needed to get this started on the grant, how much it would cost. I mean, it's not spelled out 100%, you need 10 breakers, you need a 400 amp service, all that's not in there. All right, it was a proposal. We had, Nauman came out, Hess came out, they would only do the plumbing part, $75,000 for the plumbing. Hess was $95,000 for the HVAC work and some of the plumbing. SR Squared came out, which is Joe Corsimo, and he gave us the whole thing, $660,000 additional cost to do the whole project. Went to Rosemary Brown, I took her what we had, I took her fixtures, toilet fixtures, showers, the generator, everything I had. And I worked on this for months, probably more than a year. And what she told me was, they can't give us the 660. They won't do it because there's so many people trying to get these grants. So we had to break it down into phases, and they would only give us 230 each phase, and they couldn't guarantee they could give us that. So we would take whatever they gave us. I mean, if we have to get rid of some of this stuff that can't be done, like the siding on the building, okay. The windows being fixed, we can do that ourselves. There's some stuff like we already did. We got the equipment for the kitchen. That's already been donated. It already has someone that's gonna clean it. Me and John are gonna change it to LP from from LP to natural. We're gonna convert it. What else did we do? We got Mike and Patrick went up to New York State and got us the gear racks, that was in here, they're already donated, we have them. We're gonna tear them out ourselves and put them in. So a lot of the stuff it's just in here because we needed it for the grant to be written, to get pricing. We did get proposals for engineering from Integra and Dansbury, and why they did not put a bid in, I don't know. Integra is the engineering firm, and then Dansbury, they would provide all the construction documents. And their price was around $19,000 for the whole thing,
Well, phase 1 and 2,
the whole thing.
phase 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, everything. And Jim spent months going through these contracts and getting them to the words that he wanted, the way he wanted them written. And there's prices in here, Integra's price ain't in here, but Dansbury's was about $8,000. And then Integra was another $7,000 or $8,000, and that's why we asked for the 20, didn't ask for anything in phase 2. Cause that's what we had no idea, and try ignorance on my part, that's fine, whatever, that the borough had to be this involved in it. Really didn't, we didn't know,
Okay.
so now we do.
I hear what you're saying, but here's some things to understand. Up until this week, we had not seen the grant request, not even the grant request, and it was requested in 2021. Okay, let me continue. You've done some work there, the borough knew nothing about it.
Right.
These two grants that we just saw the grant request for are in the name of Delaware Water Gap, and we are responsible for administering the entire grant. Listen to me. You've done this work, we knew nothing about it, and we just found out the responsibility that this borough has to these two grants. You speak of some work that you went out and did, you were doing it your way and administering it in the way that you thought was appropriate. But a lot of the things that you are doing, we cannot submit in this grant request and get reimbursed for. We cannot handle this like a home do-it-yourself project, because we will not be reimbursed for the funds if we do not manage this through an engineer and proper contracting and have the work done that way.
I don't think he was
I didn't ask
proposing
for
that.
reimbursement.
No,
I'm just saying, I
I
think the point was that, I'm sorry, but the point was that some of the things that are on here are not things that are gonna have to be done. So the scope of work underneath the proposal that was submitted is not the same scope of work that's gonna have to be done now. So while I may have said 230, it may not actually be 230, because they don't need the full scope that was in the original proposal.
And
I don't think they're looking to get
the
reimbursed for work they may do themselves.
The generator that's in here, we don't need because we got one.
So the engineer will be able to determine
Right.
what
That's what we
items
need the
in
engineer.
that list are actually gonna be needed.
Right.
And that
And they
that
need to
would
spend
be,
more than 5 minutes looking at the firehouse and taking a few pictures. They need to come and,
right, and that would be the scope of his responsibility.
Right.
He would be awarded to supervise a job. First thing on his list would be to come out, see what's needed, take a look at the original estimate. He
Right.
might say, items 1, 2, and 3 don't need to be needed, and that might be enough to bring the cost of the project below, the 180 that, that would be allocated.
if we can't get a
That would be
radio
used for the
room, we
job.
can work with what we have now and just fix it up better.
So Lisa, what you were talking about before, I think you were just talking about whether or not we would rebid these out as separate phases, or bid it out as one project again for one party doing the entire engineering work, with the understanding that each phase be considered separately.
And with the specifications of the funds that are available. We
Right.
still need to get some indication from the fire company treasurer as to how much they can allocate to cover engineering funds and any kind of contingency that might occur when they open up the walls.
I don't think there's any contingency. Not sure what we do about the engineering. So Jim's not here, but I will go to whoever. I will go to California if I have to try and get extra money, grant, whatever I gotta do to get the money for the engineers.
So let
Given
me
that
ask-
given that it's a request for proposals, it could be mailed out to firms, and so maybe some of that is also mailing the new requests back out to the people who've already already given proposals, but also to the folks who have given proposals previously who didn't this time, to see if maybe they would resubmit something that would, and then cost-wise, it might be more in line with what you have.
And could that new package include a contingency fund, like say $20,000 per phase,
I
like?
think that's part of what you discuss with the engineer. I mean, you're
Yeah,
just
right.
asking them if they can do doing the
Right.
plans and the
Right.
bidding and the supervision for those phases for X amount of money or within that. And then they're gonna have to work with the borough and the fire department to say, what under these phases can we do, given the amount of money we have, and given the fact that we need a contingency in case something else comes up.
Right.
Let me hear from Councilmember Foster, and then I wanna hear from the mayor.
Sounds to me like it needs to be rebid with, it's spec'd out better with the things that need to leave off the list that you just mentioned. I think it needs to be rebid. Unless you guys can come up with, you know, the $38,000 difference for, the engineering proposal that's on the table, cause that's our lowest bid. We either take this bid or we go back to square zero.
Yeah, not a rebid too.
They did submit hourly according to the prevailing wage. Mayor?
Well, I think I agree with you. I think you need another study. I think you need to reach out to LSA and see if they would allow, An engineering, out of
Uh,
the the phase engineering two. costs out of phase two, so that when the guy's there, he gets it done all in one shot. Yeah.
My experience with those guys is they're pretty lenient, and if they understand where we're at with this project, they may allow it, I'm not sure. I do know that a lot of stuff has to be itemized in the grant, and it has to be, because it can get audited real quick, and the money can get withdrawn just like that, so staying in good graces with those guys and in constant contact with them, and, you know, listen, this is what we're up against, you know, can we be allowed to use so much money from phase two for, the secondary engineering stuff. So I think it'd be prudent to.
And I just wanna be clear, it's a request for proposals, it's not a bid. So, I mean, we can advertise it, but we can also send it to firms to respond back to.
How does that work? What's the difference between a bid and?
A bid is something when you're buying a service where someone can say, you're gonna buy a truck and it's, you know, the cost is X. Where this is professional services, and so you need to make sure the qualifications meet, you have to look at the whole package, just not who's gonna charge you the least amount. So, you know, like you could have lawyers come in here and you could have, you know, someone who doesn't know what they're doing and they say, I'll charge you $100 an hour, and someone else comes in and say they're gonna charge you $200 an hour. Well, yes, the $100 one may be cheaper, but they've never done the work before. And so you choose to go with the one who's higher because their qualifications are more. And engineering services are the same thing. You don't have to go with the lowest bidder for that. You have to look at the whole package, what their qualifications are, what their skill levels are, whether they have experience, all those types of things go into the decision, not necessarily who's gonna charge you the least amount of money.
So even with the request for proposal, is a bid still required?
Well, it's not a bid, it's a request for proposal, so it's a different, I mean, you still have to put something out there saying what it is you're looking for, so everyone's responding back to you in the same way. You're asking for the same information, because how else do you measure what you're getting back from folks? But once you get that information, it's not necessarily looking at it and saying, who's the cheapest? We want them, it's looking at, okay, well, who said they can do it within the parameters we have? Do they have the experience we think we need? Those types of things.
So it's up to us based on what they're bringing to the table?
It's for an engineering, I mean, it's gonna be different when you go out and bid the actual construction. That's a different process, and the engineer's gonna be in charge of that. But like, when you hire us or you hire Missy, it's not a,
Right.
you're not just going who's gonna charge you the least amount of money. I mean, it's a consideration, but it's not the only consideration.
Okay.
Or
All right.
did you have something else you were saying?
I probably am the cheapest.
So,
so I'm just saying.
if we send it out for a request for proposal, those two other things that Howard has in front of him,
We could send to those companies who at some point were, but maybe they're not looking at we advertise this in the paper. So maybe those guys aren't looking for that, that's not the type of work they do, they're not having someone go through the paper looking for requests that are coming in, but they can be mailed specifically to them, and then they could respond back with information if they know. Yes.
I think we still need to get some idea from the treasurer of the fire department how much they can handle outside of that $20,000 for this project.
You guys have any idea?
We have no spare money, that's what you're asking.
So only the $20,000 out there, you can't afford any other money out of your account to work on this project.
I'm gonna say no. We did just get more money from Smithfield Township. It's not gonna come in for maybe another 6 months to a year, but,
That's through the fire tax.
yeah.
And none of the money that you have in your accounts can be used for, it's your capital improvement money,
There
none
is,
of that
I
is
think-
for capital improvement.
I think they're, and I'm sorry,
We do have the building
the
fund.
building fund has 20,000, 25,000 in it?
I think it was 20,000, I saw it in your last report.
So that is there is 20,000.
So are you gonna use the building fund for the
Well,
building?
it has to be used for the building, yes,
So
sorry.
this is for the building,
That's just for the building alone, that's it.
Yes, it is,
so can it be used for this project?
yeah, it can.
Is there
As
anything
far
else?
as I know, I mean, it was from Tim Snow's mom donated a lot of it, so, for the building.
It was for the building.
So, see, this is part of
That
the
was
building,
specifically for the building.
so, and
That was
that's
used
where
by
it's
my brother.
been, so. yes,
So
it
can we get in writing what you have available that you can contribute to forward this project along? Before we put out a proposal, we need to know specifically what can be expended, because we don't have it in our budget to finance this project.
I'm not asking the borough to.
Hold it in
finance.
escrow, get an escrow.
Now, you get our treasurer's report every month,
I
right?
get a
Right.
treasury report, but
Well,
you're
that has
saying
the
that you have.
building fund on it.
It does, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
if
does.
you look at it, it
And
does.
that's-
But he just said to me that there's no money, so I need to
Well,
know in
We have the
writing.
building fund, that's the money for the
Okay,
building.
one moment, hold on. I need to know in writing, we need to know in writing, and you need to give us some avenue for putting it into an escrow, set aside for this project, out of your funds. We need an exact number, and we need your treasurer to confirm that it's set aside, earmarked, escrowed for this project. And that is what we will use to formulate the proposal, what your resources you have.
So with what's left over from the, excuse me, from the grant after engineering, how far do you think that's gonna take you guys?
I think phase one could be almost completed, we take some stuff off that's already been done.
And that'll be decided by the engineer,
Yeah.
who we come in to run the job.
We'll need
He's
to
gonna,
walk through with him and show him what we have and what is needed.
yeah,
Do we need to replace the whole electrical? No, but it needs to be gone over 100%.
That
It was put in in
photograph
'68.
spoke volumes.
Yeah.
That panel is,
Yeah. I mean, if anybody wants to come see the firehouse, and I'll gladly walk you through it anytime.
But nevertheless, it's up to the engineer
I know.
and the contractors to decide how they approach the situation. I mean, we could look at it, we could get our cousin to look at it and say, well, you only need to do this much with the electrical, but the contractor and the engineer will say, overall, how the project has to be done according to code and according to what they do professionally, and then they will say how much that costs. No matter how much we wanna guesstimate it, it's up to the engineer and the contractors to determine how much, what they will do and how much it will cost, and then we can say what we actually can do financially. So the first course of action is to determine your financial base, exactly how much you can expend to phase one, at least phase one of this project. Then we can go about constructing the additional proposals with that information inserted in the boundaries of the project. So with that said, I guess a motion to rebid or
Send out
present a
proposals.
proposal.
To resend out requests for proposals.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask for a motion to resubmit or request for proposals after receiving confirmation from your treasurer in writing of the amount of finance that you can expend for engineering costs and any particular overage for this project. Do I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Can I I think the overage piece is something that
Yeah.
would in some way be worked with the engineer and coming up, when you come up with, when you bid those pieces, to say that we have to factor in overage into the overall piece of it. Like when you're looking at
Okay.
the 180, you're saying like, we can't go
Spend
out
all the
with
way up
bids
to
up to
180,
180,
right,
cause we
okay.
have to have,
Okay, so, the motion
I would just take the overage out. That's
made
it.
to resubmit the proposal after receiving written confirmation from your treasurer as to available funds to expend for phase one of this project. Do I hear a second?
Second.
No, you made the bid, you made the motion.
I made the motion.
You made the
I made
motion,
the motion.
okay, second, I'm
Right.
sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passed.
I'd like to make a motion that Allison try to find out if we can use, for phase two, out of that $150,000 request from.
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion.
We don't need a
for that.
motion
for
that, she's going
I
to do
can
it.
email them, and then if they require a letter or something,
Well,
then.
why don't we do that, if we will, I mean, if there should be at least a motion, cause that was an issue
Okay.
last time.
Alright,
Make a motion that
That-
Allison investigate, having some of the $150,000 grant be apportioned to engineering work.
I'm gonna suggest a revision to that motion to be that,
Have another meeting.
that you authorize the president of council to send a letter requesting that 10% or 15, whatever, a percentage of the funds awarded to the second phase be used for engineering cost if feasible, or, I don't know,
If allowable.
yeah. Based on what Allison finds out.
Is that your motion?
What she said.
It's just that, so if Allison finds out, yes, we can do that, then Lisa has authority to send that letter and get it out, we don't
Right.
sit around and wait.
I'll second that.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
She could just send it out like January.
Okay, if we could, we have an item
The last one's not gonna come up tonight, I don't have the,
regarding the intermunicipal.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
and I'd
so-
actually like that motion, the last motion to be redone, I need somebody to say again.
a motion to authorize,
Not the last one, the one before, about getting a letter and all that stuff, what,
it was a motion to, well, I'm gonna rephrase slightly, authorize the solicitor to send requests for proposals, revised requests for proposals after receiving a letter from the fire company regarding the amount of funds they have available to expend on phase one. That's,
That sounds
like
right.
a summary, that was what was made?
thank you, that's.
Okay.
But shouldn't
I
it
know who
be
made,
for just
I know who made the motion, I just wanna
engineering?
make sure I have it correct in the minutes.
Not for the whole thing,
For the engineering for that phase.
right? That wasn't mentioned.
That'd be a good idea, I think.
What?
Well, I don't know if it's just what funds you have available to expend towards the project.
That's what I understood it for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have
It'll be that
20,000.
We're saying, we know we have the
But
20,000.
hopefully, Howard, you won't have to use any of it. I mean, it's,
Well, we won't.
right, so,
We'll have to make it fit what we have.
right, that's the whole intent.
Okay, before we go, I just wanted to let everyone know that I have been writing and writing and writing with regards to the oversized and overweight tractor trailer trucks that traverse our road and get stuck at the end of the road, and the state patrol has to come and back them out. And I wrote to everyone, including Mr. Kufro at PennDOT, and then I started writing to the legislators when I didn't get a response, but I did get a response back today. Mr. Kufro first referred me to, a Miss Angela Cooper, with engineering, with the Department of Transportation, who said to me that, yeah, there's a problem with the trucks, but it has to be enforced by, someone else. There's signage there. And I wrote her back and I said that we are well aware of the existing limitations. She said, oh, there's limitations on the road for the length and the weight of the trucks. And I said, I'm aware that there are limitations for large vehicles on State Road 611. However, our point is that the regulations are violated and ignored frequently. What we are seeking is assistance with an avenue to enforce the violations. While the state police has little interest in enforcing the roadway regulations, they are called regularly to back the stuck, oversized trailers out of the community. The damage caused by roadways and signage, unsafe, oversized trailers attempting to traverse 611, avoid the toll stations, is beyond the abilities of our small borough to maintain. And when I originally sent the communication, it was to Mr. Kufro and the legislators that are working on the closure of 611. I want to let them know that all that would be for naught. If the trucks keep going down 611, they're still gonna have rock falls, not to mention the road damage that's being caused to us. So after a few months of annoying them, Mr. Kufro wrote back and said, we understand there's an issue with trucks ignoring the restrictions on 611 to avoid the I-80 bridge tolls. At this time, PennDOT does not have the authority to perform enforcement of oversized, overweight vehicles using cameras as requested, and that was actually Representative Probst that suggested the cameras. We cannot utilize enforcement unless legislation is introduced allowing for this to occur within Pennsylvania. House Bill 1284 was signed in 2023, which allowed automated work zone speed enforcement. This allows for fines and active work zones for violating the posted speed limit. We would need enforcement agencies to assist, so we made a request to the state police headquarters for more routine targeting enforcement on 611. We are also planning additional signage to reinforce the restriction. I responded by saying, thank you for outlining the measures that are needed to address the issue of overweight and oversized tractor trailers on our roadway. I am appreciative of any coordination with the state police and additional signage. And Representative Probst, who had responded, any legislation that would assist our community to exist and maintain against the high traffic traversing our roadways would be a great help. So I just wanted to let you all know that I have been sending out those communications regarding the oversized tractor trailer trucks. Our mayor has the speed enforcement electronic signs going in, and that was the latest that I got on that. And hopefully legislation can come in where they could put some kind of camera to give them tickets. And that's all I have.
Did I miss the motion for the flushing?
Yes, you
Yes.
did, I was gonna email you.
Just
Yes,
making sure.
I
Yeah,
did that
I'll-
ahead of
I'll
time
email you
because-
to-
So if there's no more discussion, I will open it for any comments from the public. Yes, sir.
Is there a way to refocus, that request that you're gonna put out to all these various people to say, look, here are the things we want in itemized order. Most important to us, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 400, okay? And these are the constraints we have. Only this much for this, only that much for that, and here's our total estimate. What would you do for us in accomplishing the maximum number of these desires of ours, given that financial total constraint?
That's exactly what we plan to do.
I think
Pretty much.
there's a slight problem with the list of priorities because we got a grant saying that I think that's a conversation to have with them once they're hired, saying, these are the phases we're asking what you can do for this amount of money in relation to that phase for engineering. But I don't think we can go through, I think that's, the conversation of priorities is a conversation to have with the engineer once they're hired.
Okay, except that when you have that list of priorities, there may be number 47 is a generator, oop, we've already got a generator. So you say, you know,
But the engineer isn't going through and telling us what they can do for 230,000, they're just doing the planning. So their planning's not gonna change if they're gonna have a generator in or not generator in.
but the utilization of available funding has to be something the engineer is cognizant of.
They will be once they are going through the plans with the fire company.
Any other questions? Okay, if no other questions, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Oh, they got the second.
Second,
Second. Second.
all in favor?
I seconded.